Do you want to have new outside of the box ways to win your Warzone games? Well, then watch this video, because today I'm going to cover 10 unique strategies that you should try at Warzone. Welcome back to COD Trendy. Let's get into the video. Number 10, drop on the outskirts of the map. The outskirts of the map in Warzone are heavily underrated, and a lot of players don't even realize how many great locations there are. One of these locations includes a warehouse in the military base where players can obtain a bunch of different loot, and there are usually a few boxes to loot. Another includes a farmhouse that is slightly out of the traditional path near the farm location. Furthermore, there are usually lots of vehicles on the outskirts that players haven't obtained, and players will have a chance to make an exit from this area as well. Number 9, stay on top of the stadium. A lot of players may not realize that it is actually possible to get on top of the stadium in the center of the map. Players will need a helicopter to do this, however, it is worth it because the player can then use a sniper to defeat enemies from the rooftop. One thing that makes it such a great strategy is that many players aren't expecting anybody to be on top of the stadium, and it gives the player cover from enemy fire that they would otherwise have to deal with on the ground. Number 8, sneak up on players while they are getting their custom loadout. The custom loadout feature in Warzone is one of the most interesting additions, and many players weren't expecting such a great new mechanic to be added in this COD Battle Royale that is Warzone. However, it also gives players ample opportunity to sneak up on enemies that are usually not seized to its full potential. Players will have a chance to sneak up on enemies while they are adjusting their loadout after picking up their custom loadout. This is the prime time to defeat enemies when they are least expecting it. Number 7, throw multiple grenades to confuse enemies. Confusing enemies can be done in many different ways, however one of the most unique ways to do this is by throwing grenades in lots of different directions. This is only advisable to put into action if a player has grenades that they wouldn't otherwise be using later in the match. Throwing grenades in multiple directions will confuse the enemies and also provide a loud sound that will mask the player's footsteps if they are sneaking up on an enemy. Decoy grenades are especially useful for this because they will create a lot of foot sound for a few long seconds. Number 6, drop on top of unsuspecting players with a powerful shotgun. Powerful shotguns are vastly underrated in Warzone, and they often do a lot of damage in a short amount of time, even more so than SMGs. An example of a powerful shotgun is a Dragon's Breath unique weapon. Players can employ this tactic in many different ways, however one of the most useful ways is by riding in a helicopter and waiting until the enemy is spotted. After that, the player can jump out and parachute down to the enemy, blasting them with their shotgun when they reach the ground. This creates an unsuspecting situation where the enemy is completely blindsided by the player's strategy. Number 5, drive in a separate vehicle from teammates. Separate vehicles are important for players that have teammates so that if one vehicle gets destroyed, every player won't die. A lot of teams decide to ride in a single vehicle, which is one of the easiest and least strategic ways to be defeated quickly. What the player and their teammates should instead do is all have a separate vehicle, or at the very least, have a few vehicles split up between a few teammates. If a player doesn't use this strategy, then it is likely that they will eventually explode due to an enemy C4 or rocket launcher. Number 4, save and use smoke grenades in the final circle. Smoke grenades in the final circle will be a useful tactic that the player can employ to hide from enemies and move across the landscape in secrecy. The final circle will usually be out in the open, and as such, the player will need to find a way to maneuver across the battlefield without being seen. A lot of players underestimate the ability of smoke grenades and believe that they are not more useful than decoy grenades or other explosives. However, using them is one of the best strategies in the entire game, and this is especially true when the final circle hits. The best way to use this strategy is by throwing multiple at once to shroud the area in smoke. Number 3, get a helicopter immediately after jumping. Obtaining a helicopter after jumping out of the plane at the beginning of a match will let the player gain the high ground and spot players when they are landing. This will be helpful for calling out enemies that the player's teammates may not have seen, and it will also allow for a swift exit from the area. It's very little effort to obtain a helicopter if the player spots one in the area, and it is always worth it because the player will then gain an advantage over their enemies. Number 2, trick the opponent in the gulag. The gulag is a difficult arena to win, but the player can employ many different tricks to defeat their enemy that they may not have initially thought of. One of these tricks is pretending to be AFK when the match first starts, and another is throwing grenades in every direction to trick the enemy into becoming confused. Both of these are great strategies, and players can think of even more with the endless possibilities that there are in the gulag. Sometimes playing traditionally just isn't the best way to win. Number 1, use a vehicle as a distraction. Vehicles are great for making a quick escape from an area, however they can also be used to confuse enemies and distract them, allowing the player and their teammates to sneak up behind the enemies and defeat them. The most notable way to use a vehicle as a distraction is to get into a vehicle and exit it while it is still moving. The vehicle will then confuse the enemy into believing that there is a person riding in it while the player is actually sneaking up behind them. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our videos in the future. Also watch the 2 videos that are on your screen because I'm sure you'll love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.